All right, thanks Arun, and it's really a pleasure to see all of you here, and great to be in a conference in the flesh again. It's been a couple of years, and it's so refreshing to see so many familiar faces. My name is David. I'm MD of Growth and Innovation Asia for Zeno Group, and this is my colleague Gaurav.
Hi everyone, I'm Gaurav. I'm the Data and Analytics Director at Zeno. I love data, and my team is constantly working on finding new ways to use data and analytics to improve measurement and make comms work better.
So today our talk, we wanted to keep it light and simple, hopefully very practical and something that everyone can take home, right? We call it from data informed to data driven because I think all of us have data. Who doesn't have data here? Put up your hands, right? So everyone's hand is down, so you all have data, right? Are you using your data properly, right? Are you making the most out of it? And I think that's sort of what we wanted to share today and just maybe give you 5 ways that we found that we could make data work harder for ourselves and our clients. So jumping right into it, the first way that we found that we could use data better for our clients is we could use data to identify the white space for more effective storytelling. And I want to show you a real example of how we do this, right? So this is a logistics client that we work for. And what we mean when we say white space is that we believe that there are so many data signals out there. You can have social content, you can have engagement content, you can look at what publishers are publishing, right? But if you think about data as a content marketplace, right? So there's supply and there's demand. And you could look at supply side signals and you could look at demand side signals. For example, look at what brands are publishing, that's a supply side signal. But if you look at what journalists are writing about or what influencers or thought leaders in a certain industry are conversing about on social media, that's probably a demand side signal and it tells you how organically popular or interesting a certain topic is. Now what we did for our client was we looked at 6 categories and we looked at all the kinds of conversational and other kinds of signals that we could find. We looked at the supply side signals and we looked at the demand side signals. The gray bar tells us what the demand is like based on the demand side signals. And the colored bars, please don't try and guess who the brands are, right? Are sort of the supply side signals, and it tells you what brands are conversing or publishing or talking about a certain topic. And you could sort of see, just by looking at this simple graph, right, that when we ran an analysis on this, what we found was that innovation was by far the most talked about topic, maybe because it's so broad and so unspecific, right? But pick another one, pick resilience. This was during the time of COVID, right? There was a lot of demand for information, for opinions, for points of view around resilience. But on the supply side, not many brands were talking about it. And that's what we call the white space. And if we could just use data a little bit more intelligently to always keep an eye on what this white space looks like for a brand in any given topic that they're interested in, we think that you could make a big difference in how you drive effectiveness for storytelling. Back to you, Gaurav.
Thanks, David. So moving on, the second point is how do we identify the right metrics and also simplify measurement. So in today's world, there's a lot of data, and that therefore it leads to a lot of metrics. So this can get a bit overwhelming for marketing professionals, especially when they have to report to higher level or top level management, right? So our team set out on a process to simplify measurement so that it's understandable for everyone in the team. So what we start by doing is we basically sit down, we map the key metrics using a measurement framework, and then once the key metrics are done and ready, we then work on creating a single metric, which is a multivariate. That is, it is a combination of different metrics for measurement. So how do we arrive at this, or how do we pick these metrics to form a single metric is we look at what works for your business and how do you want to measure value, and then add different weights and make sure that we come up with a singular score to help understand the trend. Now, if you look at the dashboard in these examples, right, you can see different metrics which are most commonly used, like volume of mentions, you have social engagement, etc. But if you look at the highlighted box, that is basically our team-created earned media score. Now, the earned media score actually feeds a lot of metrics into it with different weights, and it helps simplify measurement. So when a top-level exec looks at this, they can immediately tell, based on the trend of the earned media score, how is their comms strategy working. And if you have more data literate marketing professionals, they can use this as an indicator and then probably do a deeper level analysis to identify where they're lagging behind and how do you optimize your comm strategy.
I think that's really interesting because at the beginning of today, we already had a panel discussing how do you create that understanding of how valuable comms is for you, right? And using multivariate metrics, we're able to look closely and dissect, right? So I think one thing that we mentioned just now is that it's not a black box metric where you say, oh, it's just media mentions or PR value, and it's hard and very abstract. But what you're trying to look at is what is it that really contribute back to your business? And how do we build that into a single metric that really means something to you and to the people that you report to? For my next third way to use data and analytics to improve your communications today, I want to just ask a quick question. How many of you can relate to this, right? Twitchy bosses and twitchy clients who jump at everything and call it a crisis. Did a crisis happen today for anybody? Not yet? Great. I'm glad we're all still in the room and not rushing out to take an urgent phone call, right? But I think that this is something that's really urgent and important that data and analytics actually fixes, right? And it trains us to identify what is really a crisis and what's just an issue. I wanted to give you maybe a quick example of how we worked with a financial services client for this, right? So the point I want to make about this is that, yes, it's data because a lot of us have our social listening tools on, a lot of us have our framework set up, but I also want to make an important point that it's less about just data and collecting data and crunching data, but it's also about creating a culture that understands the data. That's the hard part in this, which is data, numbers, and what do those numbers tell us? But there's the soft part in this, which is how we all interpret that data. And I think the biggest challenge for us is how do we train our stakeholders to understand the data better. So for our financial services client, what we did first was we worked with them on what we call a risk assessment level, or RAL, as we call it in common parlance, that actually, what Gaurav said just now, right, takes multivariate factors to sort of identify when a crisis is emerging, right, but also helps to create sort of working with a client. So this is almost like their job with us when we talk about investments, right? What's your risk appetite, right? What gets you jumpy? And creating and crafting for them a risk assessment level that would be appropriate for them, right? And then showing them in very transparent manner, you can sort of see the data processing that we go through. We help them understand why we arrive at that risk assessment level. But I think point 3, which is the action plan, that is the most important, right? We work with that client to train their stakeholders. So you can imagine head of supply chain, head of investments, CEO, right? For everyone to sort of understand what this means and what this translates to, and get everyone to sort of agree what action we will take whenever a risk assessment level reaches a certain point, right? So if it's 1, it's not too serious, we'll let the product team manage it. But if it's 5, your CEO better be jumping onto it. We need to call the war room, right? The moment we got buy-in from the client and their department, right, what we realized and what the client fed back to us was, okay, things are so much simpler now, right? When my CEO looks at this and every day he's just looking at what the risk level looks like today, right? If it's 2, he's not busy connecting with me and chasing me and asking me for a report and immediate every hour sort of pulse updates, right? He's saying the team's got this, it's not a very big issue because this influencer that tweeted something bad about us, someone mentioned it just now, right? Really doesn't matter. Sorry if you're an influencer, right? But if it was a major newspaper and that's now picked up by another 10 newspapers and it's become a huge full-blown issue, we are so right on top of it in real time. And I think by just thinking about how we can craft data and analytics and create something that's cultural and help companies accept and understand how to use that data, it really makes our job, number 1, easier. It reduces waste of resources, worrying about things that we really don't have to worry about, right? And it helps inform action in a much better and easier way.
Thanks, David. Moving to the next point, how do we use data to reveal the power of integrated campaigns? Now, integrated campaigns are everywhere, right? Everyone's trying to do integrated work, but at the same time, we still have teams working in silos. Like, for example, there'll be a PR team which has their own action plan and own set of metrics to measure success, whereas we have a social team with their own action plan and own set of metrics to measure success as well. But both of them are trying to achieve the same objective. right? So that is when my team came in and said, why can't we integrate this data, or why can't we map data together to understand how one channel is affecting another in the space of integrated campaigns? So that is when we came up with this dashboard, or as an example of a dashboard, which is a brand monitoring dashboard we built for one of our clients, right? Which looks at performance across different channels and also maps them to initiatives in each channel. Now, if you look at the second box, we have mapped out the trends of different channels. This is a summarized version, but we can go into we did go into details. Was when we look at, for example, if there's an activation in social, how is that disrupting earned media coverage, Or the other way around, if there is an initiative rolled out for earned media coverage, how is it disrupting social? And this gives us an understanding of how one channel influences another, and what if there's any momentum shift which is being caused. At the same time, we can also understand multi-channel behavior of different users for a particular brand. Now, this can also lead to further enhanced or advanced analysis, like you can do a correlation analysis to see, oh, this type of content probably works in social, but it also gives you a bump in earned media coverage, right? So, and things like that, which helps optimize our comp strategy.
Thank you very much, Gaurav. For our fifth one, I just wanted to give you something maybe slightly more interesting, right, and unusual. So one of the best challenges that we've had in the past 2 years is working with a client of ours to really think about how we could use psychometric data to really understand the use of personas when targeting different audiences. And what I mean by that is this, right? Most of our CEOs are on LinkedIn, right? I saw a bunch of LinkedIn people here today. Right? And they want to put content out, and they want to engage, and they want to be the most famous CEO in their category on LinkedIn. And I think that's a challenge that most of us in agency or in comms department have. What we did, and this was really, really interesting, was for us to really try to understand the psychometric data and use that to help enhance the use of LinkedIn and other platforms for our clients. And what we did was, so very simple. If we took all the text that we could and we mined LinkedIn, we won't tell you how we did that, but we mined LinkedIn for text, right? And we took all that textual data and funneled it into a machine, right? That sort of broke down the algorithm and helped us identify what the Ocean model calls the various psychometrics. So Ocean model is a well-established psychometric model, right? But modeling that into data is something that's quite interesting. I can't tell you how we do that, but when we took that and funneled it into Ocean, and then we exported that again, what we could really see is all these spider webs, right? That tells us, okay, what kind of personality types are the people in the industry like, right? So Ocean is openness. You can see all this conscientiousness. I can't read, but basically that's it. What we then did was we took Ocean and we looked at all the psychometric data and we looked at specific posts, right? A sampling of posts because there's way too much to understand. But we looked at each post, what kind of Ocean attributes did it sort of show, right? What kind of psychometric attributes did it kind of show? And then we correlated it against performance and said, what sort of social engagement did they have? And we dug one level deeper to ask why, right? With that, we could then analyze and say for specific sets of audience, they react better when your spokesperson on LinkedIn is engaging in this psychometric manner. And I think that that's really important and interesting, because what our strategy team then does is they will take that, and as they're drafting that content strategy, they're going to say, we need to use more of these words, or we need to talk a bit more like this, or sound a little bit more like that, because that's proven, based on our own study, right, to engage better with the audience that you're targeting. So this is one more way that we could use data to really engage and think about how to do something as simple as executive profiling in a different way.
Right. So we have a bonus point here for everyone, and that is on a new initiative which we have started off as on a team, which is basically trying to integrate multiple data sources to get bigger, more better and accurate data. So in the marketing industry, we usually work with a lot of third-party data sources, right? And we have a lot of marketing platforms which have their own pros and cons. So there's a platform which does something really well. At the same time, it doesn't. There's another platform which does something equally well too for another task. So our team decided, why can't we use the best of all the tools available in the market? And that's how we started integrating data sources from different marketing tools. Now, if you look at this dashboard as an example, this is an earned media intelligence dashboard, and we are tracking coverage across APAC, so it's fairly straightforward. But when we looked at the different marketing tools which are providing data sources in the market, we noticed that there are certain tools which do a really good job for a particular region or a particular country, and there's another tool which does a better job for another country in the region. So then we started by looking at these different sources and started to integrate and model this data to build our own master data set. Now, this gives us better data and more accurate data to report on. We get a more real picture of the coverage we are getting in earned media. At the same time, we start to get more control over our data, right? We start to build our own data set, which we can then use to benchmark in the future, as well as formulate client strategies for someone from the same industry.
Yeah. So maybe I'll put it in very simple terms for us, right? So most of us use Meltwater and we love Meltwater. We also use Cision and we love Cision, right? But Meltwater and Cision and others like them might not be equally as good in every single market. And what we are really doing is, one particular market is China, and I'll just be quite open with you, right? And so for China, what we did was we worked with clients to look at which are the best-in-class tools for each different region. And particularly in China, we worked with 3 or 4 different Chinese agencies to find and give us media data that we really want, right? We work with a client to then warehouse it in their own warehouse to create our own unique custom data set so that we can then provide reports that are, we think, much more accurate than if we had just gone with one vendor and gotten it from there, right? All right, so that's the end of our presentation. It's really lightning. We hope you learned something in the 6 points that we've managed to share with you. We are happy to take questions. I think we'll be hanging around during lunch. But thank you very much for all your attention and listening to us.
Thank you.